Hello, everybody. I'm not sure if I should get started or not, or should I just wait a moment? I might wait a moment and see do more people arrive.
I think you're supposed to wait until Dan shows up.
Oh, am I? Oh, I better not do anything until Dan shows up. So
Dan's supposed to introduce you.
I'll wait patiently. So it's
I think yours is Dan. And
Oh,
there he
there.
is.
Good morning, everybody. We'll get started here in just a second, I think. Okay. I think we're ready. Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you joining us from Ireland?
I am indeed. Yes.
Great.
Beautiful sunny day here in Dublin. After this presentation, I'm leaving the office and I'm going to the pub to celebrate while you guys are starting your morning, I think. Are you?
Yes, it's 8 o'clock in the morning here.
Very early. Too early for a drink, I think.
Well, great. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and get started, and then we can kind of go from there.
That's perfect. Thanks very much for that introduction, Dan. And hello, everybody. Thank you very much for getting up so early this morning in your time to come and listen to me speak. As Dan said, my name is RobLowney, and I'm a learning technologist at the Teaching Enhancement Unit in Dublin City University in Ireland. So all the way over the other side of the Atlantic. And I'm here today to talk to you about a community initiative I lead, a community of practice, all around supporting educators to develop their digital competences for teaching, learning, and assessment using Moodle. I would much rather be in Montana with you all. Out of interest, my family has links with Montana. My family name, Lowney, comes from the southwest of Ireland, West County Cork. And during the 1800s, a lot of my family worked in the copper mines in Allihies in West Cork. But those copper mines closed down in the late 1800s, I think. And a whole lot of Lowneys emigrated and set up shop in Butte, Montana. So if you ever come across a Lowney from in around the Butte area, they are definitely one of my long lost cousins. So you can say hello to them from me. And who knows, maybe I'll encounter a Lowney during the mountain moot over the next 2 days. That'll be wonderful. But enough about that. Let me move on and get started with this morning's presentation. First of all, I want to wish you all a Céad Míle Fáilte, which in our native Irish Gaelic language means 100,000 welcomes. You're very welcome to my presentation today. Roughly speaking, there's kind of 5 things I want to cover off, and of course give plenty of opportunity for interaction and discussion. And I have a little polling activity I'd like to do with you as well. But I'm going to just give a little bit of background about my university, DCU, and the type of work we do. Talk a bit about communities of learning, communities of practice. Then I'm going to talk to you about Moodle Munch, which is our community that we are sustaining over this side of the ocean. Talk to you a bit about the evaluation of our community thus far and the impact of our community and our plans for the future. So that's our rough roadmap for the next little while. So about DCU, I don't know if any of you are familiar with our university or heard about it. If you have, please let us know in the chat if you've ever come across any of our work before or any of my colleagues. Please do let me know. But we are a young, dynamic university. We're just celebrating 40 years in operation. We're situated primarily in North Dublin City, Dublin, of course, being the capital of Ireland. And we've about 18,000 students and about 2,000 staff. And that student population includes, what we would consider traditional students, full-time undergraduates, postgraduates, etc. But it also includes part-time students, online distance learning students. Although, of course, with COVID, almost all of our students have been online distance learning students in the past while. We also have about 2,000 staff. So that's staff who are part-time, full-time, junior staff, senior staff. And when I use the term staff here, I'm using it to include teaching staff, lecturing staff, professors, assistant professors, professional staff, etc. We've 5 faculties: humanities, social sciences, engineering, computing, science and health, business and education, with a large focus on practical, industry-focused programs. We have been a very proud Moodle user for the past 18 years or so, and we're highly involved in the Moodle community, and we have, well, I was going to say we have developed. We haven't developed anything. We have funded developers who have the expertise to develop some plugins and enhance some plugins for Moodle over the years. One of which includes Moodle Board, which I think Gavin from Brickfield will be talking about during this moot at some point in time. So DCU was the primary backer behind that plugin development. We've also been a user of Mahara for the past 5 years, and we've got very, very strong integration between our Moodle and our Mahara. And we have, I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, but we have quite a high level of Mahara usage in our university, which is wonderful. And similarly, we've contributed a number of enhancements and developments to the Mahara project. So open source is very much in our veins. Sharing, disseminating, spreading the good work is very much part of our DCU DNA. My particular unit in the university, the Teaching Enhancement Unit, we are essentially the university's centre for teaching and learning. Any of you who are from higher education institutions will be familiar with that type of a unit. But we're also a constituent unit of the National Institute for Digital Learning. So we do have a strong digital focus within our unit, being part of the wider National Institute. And the National Institute is a leader in digital learning research and practice, and contributes to a number of cutting-edge strategic initiatives, both at national, international, European level, and so on. But our work largely centres mostly on supporting our on-campus teaching staff to develop their teaching excellence, both with technology and without technology. That support largely comes through various forms of professional development, structured professional development, workshops, accredited modules, consultations, projects, and so on, and communities as well, which I'm going to be talking about today. And another aspect we have, is a strong digital focus that we have within our unit is maintaining and developing our whole ecosystem of learning technologies, which we brand them as Loop. And Moodle is at the heart of that, and our Moodle instance is called Loop, and our Mahara instance is called Loop Reflect, and then we have various other technologies plugged in as well. But that's our role to support and develop our ecosystem of learning technologies. So you can see we're very committed to openness. We're very committed to supporting teaching staff to develop their practice. Very committed to digital and to technology enhanced learning. So this sort of boiling pot of all these different things really led us to developing our Moodle Munch community, which I'll get to in a moment. Oh yes, as I said, we provide a variety of professional development to staff. But before I get talking about our Moodle Munch community, I want to hear from you. So I hope you have all had your strong coffee at 8 a.m. over there in the States, because I want to do a little activity with you just for a few minutes, just to tease out some of your conceptions of what a community of learning or a community practice could look like. So what I'd like you to do, please, if you don't mind, I'm going to put a link in the chat. And if you want to click on that link, it will open up a Vivox interface for you. Vivox is our institutional polling tool here in the university. So you can click on that link and it'll open up a little waiting screen for you. And keep an eye on that screen. I'm going to open the first question for you now. So your screen should refresh and there should be a brief multiple choice question there. And the question is simply, do you consider yourself part of a community? And I'm purposely leaving the word community broad here to see what you guys come back with. So most of you have responded there, 13 out of 14. I think I'll close off this poll now and let's take a look at the results. Excellent. Unsurprisingly, 100% of you consider yourself part of a community. And I would imagine one of those communities is perhaps this community, the MtMoot community and other wider MoodleMoot communities. So no shock surprises there. But let's tease that out a little bit more. I want you to think of one word, and it can only be one word, not two words, not a compound word, but one word. Describe your community or one of your communities. Whatever you had in mind when you responded to the first question, I want you to take a moment and share a word to describe that community. Another few seconds to enter that. We have 9 out of 14 responses. I should say you can enter a second word if you like, but one word ideally would be good. I think we've got 13 responses there now. So let me close this off and let's see what you have all said. What words have sprung to mind for you all? Lovely, lovely. Education is the biggest one I can see, and that warms my heart, because I think in all the work that we do around technology, learning needs to be at the center, education needs to be at the center. So good to see that education is coming to the fore. I surmise that could also mean that being part of your community, it could be a community in education, but the being part of the community itself could be an educational experience for you all. Collaborative, I think, goes hand in hand with community, absolutely. Engaged, thinking, helpful, friendly, lovely to see. Moodle is a part of people's community there as well. Forward, good. So a lot of positivity and collaboration, engagement, learning happening with community here, which is wonderful. That's good to see. And one final question for you. I promise that's it now. I don't. Some of you may still be waking up from your morning brain, but I want to just tease out now, and this is an open-ended response. I just want to tease out a little bit. What do you get from your community? So whatever community or communities you've had in mind during this little Vivox activity, what do you get from this kind of community? And this is an open-ended response, so I'll give you all a moment just to think of something. Now you don't have to write a great big paragraph if you don't want to. You know, 1 or 2 bullet points would be fine. 1 or 2 keywords, or a fragment of a sentence would be fine. But again, just want to get a sense of what you get from your participation or your membership of these kinds of communities. Just make sure when you finish typing your point, just hit I think it's the send button or something like that, and it goes in. So we've got 12 out of 14. Most of us have responded now. I might close this off and let's take a look at what you've been sharing. Oh, excellent. Education is conversion to a carousel of practices. It is. Education is not a monolith, and practice is not a monolith, but it is an ever-changing kaleidoscope. Lovely. Mentorship, guidance, very nice. So linking back to the helpful point that came in the previous poll. Different perspective, innovation, insight, new perspective. So there's a newness around here, which is important. We get some sort of something new, something novel from our community. Support, learning, inspiration. This is lovely here, a sense of belonging and a chance to make a difference. Isn't that lovely? That's lovely inspirational words of a Thursday morning. Beautiful, beautiful. Encouragement to keep learning, problem solving, support, interaction, engagement. Absolutely. These are all the great things. Look, this capital letters at the bottom, collaboration. Absolutely. These are all of the great benefits and all of the great positives of communities. And I mean, I'm a big fan of communities, as you can probably tell, for all of these reasons and more. And I think particularly if the pandemic has taught us anything, it is really the importance of working together and helping one another and supporting one another, mentoring and guiding. And I think communities that have flourished during the pandemic, I think we need to pay good, close heed to make sure they continue to flourish after the pandemic. And indeed that we continue to look for new opportunities for new communities to support our work. Thank you very much for that. Sticking with the theme of communities and just to bring in a bit of the literature around it, many of us have probably heard of the term community of practice, sometimes community of learning, sometimes known as a learning network or a professional learning network. But at the core really is, you know, a group of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do, and they learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So there's a sense of newness, a sense of learning, a sense of development that comes from being part of a community practice. And the types of activities that a community of practice does includes, of course, you know, problem solving, looking for information, seeking sharing experience, mapping knowledge and identifying gaps. And of course, not all communities of practice need to do all of these activities. They might do some of these activities. They might do some other kinds of activities. A lot of communities may simply, I think quite a lot of communities that we are involved in probably center around this whole, you know, request for information and seeking and sharing experience. I think less so do our communities of practice and our community of learning involve, you know, working together on specific tasks and projects. But generally, this is what the literature would tell us a community of practice comprises. Similarly, we know that communities of practice are very useful for developing professional knowledge and are good vehicles for professional learning. And indeed, what is a profession? And there's endless research conducted around what a profession is, but generally, and I'm being quite broad in my definition here, but broadly speaking, a profession is a group of people that share common traits, experiences, and expertise. And you know, when we think of a profession, we think of things like the medical profession, the legal profession, and doctors and lawyers and so on. But I would argue that all of us here today who are involved with Moodle, involved in technology, enhanced learning, I consider us a profession. We have common experiences. We have professional expertise in this field, and I would consider us a profession. And if we consider ourselves a profession, then there is a need for professional learning. There is a need for constantly developing and redeveloping our knowledge and disseminating and improving and so on. And for professional learning to exist and to be successful, it needs time, it needs resources, it needs space to grow and to be. You know, the participants need to be prepared to give and receive support. Those involved in professional learning, involved in communities of practice, need to have a capacity and drive their own capacity to learn. And fundamentally, professional learning needs to be linked to practice. It needs to be practical. It needs to be linked back to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So some of the communities that we support in DCU include a teaching showcase community called the Sipping Point, where lecturers present and share innovations that they have been doing in their teaching, learning, and assessment with a view to supporting others and collaborating and so on. Another community is Advanced HE, Not sure if you've heard of Advance HE. It's a British organization that supports professionalism and fellowships in higher education teaching, and we have a partnership with them, and we encourage our junior academics to apply for fellowship, and we support them through a community of triads, peer-supported triads, helping one another to articulate their philosophies around teaching and articulate their professionalism around teaching. And we also have a learning technologies user network in DCU, which is very much a very focused community of practice, where all of us involved in learning technology in DCU get together to share information, to discuss problems, to devise new ideas and new solutions, and so on. We have some external communities that we're part of as well, including things like the Education Developers in Ireland network, so a collection of educational developers from across higher education institutions in Ireland. And of course, one which I'm here to talk about today is MtMoot2021, is very much a DCU-led, but largely externally facing community of practice. Although we do have a lot of DCU people who participate in it, it is one with a growing external reach and a growing global reach as well. So what is it, and where did it come from? Well, first of all, actually, before I get into that, you might let me know in the chat, have you actually heard of MtMoot2021? I say it has a growing global reach, but let me put that hypothesis to the test now to see if any of you have ever heard of it. And perfectly fine if you haven't, of course. I wouldn't necessarily expect you to. It's a fairly young community, but hopefully today you'll learn more about it and you might get involved. But I'm conscious not to present MtMoot2021 in isolation or in some sort of vacuum. Our MtMoot2021 community didn't just come into being. There is and always has been a wonderful sense of community built up around Moodle, and that's been at the heart of Moodle since its inception. It's the nature of open source technology. And reflecting on my own journey as a Moodle user when I was much younger and less haggard looking early on in my career, I learned and I developed so much of my knowledge around Moodle because of the community, through the Moodle.org forums, through MtMoot2021 in particular, are fantastic opportunities for professional learning and sharing and dissemination. So that community of learning around Moodle has always been there, and we see it at events like this, where we come together for these moots, which are fantastic high points. But there can sometimes be, certainly I found, or certainly I don't know how things are in the Moodle community in North America, but certainly in Europe, while the MtMoot2021s are fantastic opportunities to gather, not often in between the moots do we have good opportunities to, or structured opportunities to interact with one another and learn from one another. And that's really kind of what spurred us to formulate this MtMoot2021 community, was to keep the learning going in between moots in a kind of a structured, scaffolded way, and in particular to support novice Moodle users to get to know the community, to get to see other people and what they're doing with Moodle, and to be inspired. Because I think particularly if you're new to Moodle, if you're a small institution, or if you're not in the education sphere, it can be difficult to access that existing sense of Moodle community. So our goal with MtMoot2021 was to try and plug that gap. I commenced planning for MtMoot2021 early in 2020 when coronavirus was just something I heard at the end of a news report. And of course, it was launched while the pandemic was in full swing. But it was always intended to be an online community, supported through a series of webinar events where we would come together to share and discuss and showcase. And we've run 2 series of those webinar events in the past year. We just finished series 2 and we're planning series 3 at the moment. And to get the community started, you know, as I said, because DCU is already a leader in digital learning, we were well positioned to commence this community. We reached out to institutions around Ireland initially that used Moodle and who we knew used Moodle and would like to be involved. We also have a fantastic national body in Ireland called the National Forum, and they're responsible for supporting enhancement across all higher education institutions, and they were fantastic support for getting a community like this off the ground. And I'm sure many of you, for your own communities or your own practice in your own institutions, probably link into local government services and networks and so on. And this was our equivalent in Ireland. And then, of course, like any good community, like any good initiative, promotion is key. So in 2020, we promoted the community and promoted the webinar events through various channels, mailing lists, social media, and so on. Admittedly, largely Irish and UK based, but as I said, we are trying to be more global in our reach going forward. How is the community structured, and how are the webinar events structured? So we situate most of our activity around regular lunchtime webinars. We adopt a food motif, obviously, Moodle Munch, for people to munch on tasty Moodle ideas during their lunchtime. Lunchtime, of course, in the Irish and British time zone. We have had some North Americans join us, but it's more like a Moodle breakfast for them, rather than a Moodle Munch lunchtime webinar. But we host it during regular Tuesday slots, and you know, I found it important that we would have a good structure in place to support the community and support the professional learning. So consistency is important. So we identified regular Tuesday slots, kind of one Tuesday a month in most cases during term time, to meet for our webinars. They're held via Zoom, and people register via Zoom. And the webinars generally comprise 2 short presentations and then space for Q&A and discussion. And the reason for that is obviously to present kind of 2 snapshots of practice and give people a chance to share what they're doing and inspire others, and to try as well, of course, to appeal to the variety of interests that our participants would have. But the Q&A and discussion is hugely important, you know, hugely important for facilitating that rich interface and exchange of ideas and so on, and going back to the types of things that communities of practice do around problem solving and asking for help and information, etc. So, you know, we find it very, very important to protect that time space within our webinar events. Afterwards, of course, we follow up with materials, recordings, we put people in contact with one another to follow up with specific queries, and we've had some great examples of people connecting at these community events and then going off and working together on something afterwards. You know, so someone might introduce a plugin that they've developed, and someone else might say, "Oh gosh, you know, my college would love to have that," and then they get talking, and then something new happens as a result. I was also very conscious, however, that I wanted a structure for the community, not just in terms of logistics, but also in terms of what it was we're trying to explore and what it is, what kind of professional learning we're trying to support here. So in Europe, we have a competency framework for the digital competence of educators called DigCompEDU. And again, if any of you have heard of DigCompEDU, please let me know in the chat, or if you haven't heard of it, please let me know in the chat. It's obviously well known over this side of the Atlantic, possibly less so over your side of the Atlantic. And I should say, even though it's called the European framework, it's only called the European framework because it was developed by the European Union, but it has universal application. And I'd really encourage you, if any of you are interested in, you know, looking at frameworks for helping educators develop their digital competence, I would really recommend this framework. It's very accessible, very broad, fits a number of different contexts from, you know, your primary school, post-primary school, and upwards. Lindsay makes a great point there. She heard of it through the MEC. Absolutely, the MEC uses this framework to structure their learning. It's a fantastic framework, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, our community events weren't just random smatterings of practice and random, you know, presentations and case studies. I wanted to give the community an opportunity to see them developing and see what discrete areas of practice they were learning about during these webinar events, which is why I chose to hang everything off of this framework. This is what the framework looks like. So there's kind of 6 areas of competence: professional engagement, digital resources, teaching and learning, assessment, empowering learners, and facilitating learners' digital competence. And then within each of these 6 areas of the framework, there are specific competences that educators need to develop in order to be considered digitally competent in teaching. And these are the individual competencies here. So we can see under professional engagement, it's all about CPD and reflection. Under teaching and learning, about teaching and providing guidance and providing collaborative learning. And under empowerment, it's about accessibility and inclusion, etc., etc. So these are the types of topics we align our community events to. And over the past year, generally, a lot of our topics have centered around these competencies here. And that's to be expected, really, because the heart of the framework is in the center of the framework. Areas 2 to 5 is really the heart of the framework. So it's no surprise a lot of our webinar events have been situated around these competencies in particular. And what types of things have we been exploring in the community? I would venture that this list of topics we've covered are probably some of the topics that are at the top of your mind when you think about Moodle. But of course, teaching with Moodle, and particularly during the pandemic, when Moodle and other technologies were so much more heavily relied upon to keep teaching going, people are very interested in teaching with Moodle. So asynchronous ways of engaging students using Moodle, good design approaches for designing learning using Moodle, good ways of combining and integrating different Moodle activities and resources to design a good learning experience. Universal Design for Learning, UDL, usually proves to actually be probably the most popular topic in our community. Everyone seems to be very, very interested in learning about UDL and making sure that they're bringing good UDL into their own teaching practice. Similarly, H5P is a really big area of interest for our community, and they really, really enjoy learning about H5P and all the different things you can do with H5P and different ways that you can engage students with H5P. Assessments, of course, important, quizzes, reports, things like that. People really wanting to understand how best to use the data behind Moodle to generate insights into their students' learning. Video as well, increasingly important things like video assessment, creating video, embedding video, integrations and plugins. Everyone loves learning and hearing about new plugins, and not just, I suppose, learning and hearing about plugins from the developer point of view, but actually they love hearing the case studies of educators using it, because ultimately that is what our community is about. It's about supporting educators, and we take a pedagogy first approach with our community. We talk about how people are using Moodle and using technologies in practice and what they're doing with their students. So people are very interested in really learning about what plugins can do and have been doing for students. Admittedly, as I said, most of our focus to date has been Irish and British based, although we are hoping to expand that reach. And many of our presenters have included institutions based in Ireland, but we have been happily expanding out and inviting the likes of Gloucestershire from the UK to present. University College London have presented as well. Catalyst IT, I'm not sure if I hope you guys might know Catalyst IT. They're a pretty big Moodle partner, Brickfield Labs, and we've had the European Commission involved as well. So a good mix of institutions, but heavily skewed towards Ireland, unfortunately, but hoping to address that in the future. These are our figures for our participation at our webinar events. So even though we have about 350 on our mailing list and lots of people who register and sign up to attend the events, we can see here that our participation is growing over time, which is wonderful. From our first webinar event to our last one, we can see it growing steadily. Of course, the amount that register and then don't show up happens at the same time as well, but that's to be expected. But we're seeing the numbers going up, which is always positive, and that's what we want. As I said, it's part of our DCU DNA to be committed to openness, committed to sharing and disseminating what a community practice is about. So in my mind, the more the merrier, the more diverse the merrier, more perspectives that can be shared and more insights and greater professional learning that can be had when we have more diverse people. Country of origin, you can see in the blue and the orange is largely Ireland and Britain. We do have a small number from the US who regularly attend, usually on the east coast of the US when it's morning time there, and so some of the European countries as well, Spain, Italy, Switzerland, and so on. You know, smaller numbers. I know time zones are obviously an issue for attending live. One thing I haven't done yet is analyze the engagement with our recordings and our material that we circulate afterwards. I have a hypothesis that perhaps some of our more international community members are maybe engaging with the learning in an asynchronous format because of the time zone issue. But I conducted an evaluation of our series, our second series, which concluded in March of this year. So I really wanted to understand what is the impact of this community initiative. You know, I started it because I wanted to give people an opportunity to come together, to learn more about Moodle, learn from others, develop their own practice, engage in professional learning. And I wanted to know, well, was Moodle Munch having that effect? Was there an impact from this? So we received approval from our Research Ethics Committee in DCU to conduct an evaluation of our Series 2. The evaluation was largely quantitative, involving an anonymous questionnaire with Likert scale questions where respondents responded from strongly disagree to strongly agree in relation to a number of statements. Good enough response rate, around 25% response rate, so I was quite happy with that. Let me go forward. So I'll quickly go through a few of the results here, but I will add my slides to the course on the MtMoot site, so you can have a look at these in your own time. But largely speaking, I suppose, you know, the average number, there were 5 webinar events in Series 2, and 3 seems to have been the average number that our participants or our respondents attended. How did they find out about Moodle Munch? So a lot were directed contactly by ourselves, by the organisers. A lot of our participants heard about it from our national forum body here in Ireland, which is good. But interesting, a lot of people heard about Moodle Munch from someone else in their organization. So 29% of people found out that way. And that's very, very heartening, because that's ultimately what, you know, a community practice is about. You know, you want it to be self-expanding, and you want members of the community to be promoting and widening that circle of community themselves. So it's wonderful to see that our existing community members are telling others about it. Generally speaking, you know, between strongly agree and agree, people found that it was easy to follow along with the Moodle Munch webinars. Again, I'm very conscious that our community members have a very diverse range of experience with Moodle, and it's a fine balance to sort of, you know, share enough information that will satisfy a very advanced user of Moodle, while at the same time not overwhelming a more junior user of Moodle. So that is why you know, it's important for us to try and keep the webinar events quite easy to follow. And I think you know, adhering to the DigComp EDU framework and focusing on stories of educational practice helps make the events easy to follow. A lot of people found them interesting, which is good as well. That's hugely important to make sure that our topics are relevant to people. Again, going back to the literature that we know around professional learning has to be linked to practice, has to be relevant to one's own practice. So therefore, good to see that they found our events were interesting. Good to see that most people say they were relevant to their context. Some people a bit neutral on that point, but again, being interesting, being relevant to one's own context is important. A lot of people saying they learned new things. This is great to see. This is what a community of practice is about learning, and most people saying that they learned new things from the webinars, which is wonderful. That's exactly what we wanted to try and achieve. Similarly, in the Q&A discussion, a lot of people, most people saying they learned something new in the Q&A discussion. Some people disagreeing, a small chunk there disagreeing or neither agreeing or disagreeing, saying that perhaps they did not learn something new in the Q&A and the discussion part of the of our webinar event. So that's an interesting one to tease out, and for me as the facilitator of the community, that's kind of something for me to be conscious of in the future. A lot of people saying, and this is really where I was very interested in the impact of this initiative. So people saying either strongly agreeing or agreeing that something they learned from a webinar event they have already applied in their own practice. And that's really, really heartening to see. I think so many professional learning events we attend, so many webinar events we attend, whilst they might be interesting, there may not actually be any action out of it, or you may not actually do anything new as a result of your learning. But it is great to see that our community members are applying the stuff that they're learning in the community, because that's what it's all about. More saying, again, strongly agreeing that even if they didn't have a chance to apply something already in their practice, they do have plans to apply something in the future, which is also very, very heartening. We did have some open-ended questions on the evaluation, and these are the kind of broad themes that came through. So other things they want the community to explore in the future include learning analytics. I think learning analytics as a whole is going to become so much more important in the years to come, given our reliance on educational technology during the pandemic. So they want to learn more about learning analytics, which is great. Again, you know, I don't think you can ever, you could spend your life learning about good course design and good teaching approaches, and you would still have more to learn. So again, people very interested in learning about good course design and teaching with Moodle. I will say our community is very diverse. We've got large universities attending and small colleges, and we've got some private organizations and their HR people might be attending. So they all have diverse experience. They all have diverse levels of competence with Moodle. They all have, you know, some are using kind of free Moodle cloud sites, and some are hosting their own giant Moodle sites. So it's really important, I suppose, to recognize that fact and recognize the fact that people will have different needs and will have different abilities and potential when it comes to teaching with Moodle. So always they want to learn more and more about good teaching with Moodle, and that's heartening as well, because we want to keep pedagogy at the heart of our Moodle Munch community. More on assessment. Everyone is very interested in assessment, no matter where you are in the world. So more around assessment with Moodle, more on UDL. As I said, UDL has proven to be a very popular topic for our community so far, and will remain being so. And again, more on plugins and integrations as well, and in particular, practical stories of practice around plugins and integrations, and how institutions and how educators are utilizing these to the best of their ability to give a good learning experience for students. Other comments, they like the bite-sized, focused approach of the webinar events, you know, looking at two kind of stories of practice and teasing them out and having a discussion. Very, very manageable, very easy to sort of take on board during one's lunchtime hour. And we do buy into that food motif, and we invite people to eat their lunch while they're there, and or go out on a walk and listen to the event with their headphones, etc. But they do like that bite-sized professional learning approach. They find they're always learning something new. We saw that in the pie charts as well. They're always learning something new. It's helping to widen their perspectives on Moodle usage. Again, thinking back to novice Moodle users, thinking back to small institutions that maybe don't have the benefit of a large team of people supporting Moodle. Having the opportunities to see what others are doing gives them that new perspective, which is exactly what we know communities of practice are good for. And going back to this VVox activity, you said this exact same thing in your VVox poll result at the beginning of this session, that new perspectives and new insights is really important with communities. So great to see that our Moodle Munch community is having that effect. And as I said already, a lot of novice users in particular commenting that the community has been really good for helping them to learn more about Moodle. So what is our future? What is in store? As I said, we're planning for series 3 at the moment, which will probably run, in line with term time, will run kind of between October to March, starting this year. If any of you are interested in getting involved now, notwithstanding the time zone difference, of course, if any of you are interested in joining our community, we would absolutely love to have you. The more people, the merrier. More perspectives, the better. I know it won't always be possible to participate live in a Moodle Munch event, but I think it's definitely worthwhile maybe signing up to our mailing list. So at least you'll get access to our learning materials afterwards. Melanie saying, is that a bit.ly link agency blocks? I will send it's just a Google form, so I'll send the actual Google form link directly, Melanie, so you can get that. I tend to use bit.lys just because the Google links are so unwieldy, but I'll give a Google link now in a second for that. Similarly, we're also seeking expressions of interest in anyone who'd like to contribute a story or showcase some of their work or share some of their experience. Again, loads of topics that our community want to hear more about. And if any of you have something interesting, or if you know someone has something interesting that they'd like to share, we'd really love to hear from others who'd like to present some of their practice. And again, another form where that can be logged. All previous webinar events are available on our YouTube channel, so you can go and you can take a look at the types of things we've been exploring and learning about over the last year. All our Moodle Munch information is contained in an open collaborative document. Again, I'll put in the direct links as well, so that you can avoid the bit.ly blocking. And then lastly, I was intending to launch a brand new interactive resource at this session, only to discover today that my hyperlinks in the resource weren't working, and I wasn't able to get them fixed in time for the presentation. But I will finish off a guiding resource, and I'll add it to the course on the Mountain Moodle, and you can explore that yourself. But this is basically just a sort of an interactive H5P resource where you can explore the DigiComp.edu framework and kind of quickly access our Moodle Munch materials aligned to those particular competencies. So I apologize, but I will get that up there shortly. So that is all from me. I just want to say a very big Céad Míle Maith Ossocht an Lum Anu. Thank you so much for being here with me today and listening to Moodle Munch, to my story of Moodle Munch. I hope you found it interesting. It seems to be having an impact. We'd love for you people to get involved if you can. And yeah, so over to you if there's any questions or any points. Happy to address them now.
I think there's a few questions in the chat there.
Oh, great. Thanks, Dan. Melanie did it. So I think what I'll do, I'm conscious of coming up on time now, Melanie, but if I'll put the direct Google links maybe on the course page, if that's okay, and you can get access. Well, I think there's an announcements forum there as well. I can put out an announcement with them as well. So the Munch is 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. In our time zone, in the Dublin and London time zone. So I think currently we are in our summertime at the moment. So there's a 7-hour difference, I think, between Dublin and Montana at the moment. But East Coast of the States, I think there's usually about a 5-hour difference. So our North American members, we only have a small few of them, but most of them are on the East Coast, and they tend to join in while they're having their breakfast time. So if any of you are East Coasters, hopefully you'll be able to join us for a live event in the future. Kaylee has some excellent Irish. Well done, Mahu, Kaylee. That's beautiful Irish in the chat there. Good of Mahugut, Tafaljarot. Excellent. Yeah. So please do check things out. I'll post the links again. And yeah, please, the whole point of a community practice is disseminating and sharing and learning. So if you can contribute to Moodle Munch, or if Moodle Munch can help you in any way, we would be delighted for that to happen.
Does anybody have any questions for Rob? All right, well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. Hope we didn't cut into your pub time too much.
Not at all. It's time to go to the pub now. I'll have a Guinness or two, and then I'll go home and I'll log on for some of the MtMoot sessions later. So if you see a slightly tipsy Irishman at some of the MtMoot sessions later, don't be too alarmed. It's just me.
That's great. All right. Well, hopefully we can get you to Montana sometime, and we can drive you down to Butte's, only an hour south of us, so we can take you down to Butte.
I can meet some of my cousins then.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.